Today I wanted to talk about types of angles. This is probably what you'll see in geometry right after you're introduced to lines and the different types of lines and their relationships. So we can see that we have a couple here. We got six identities that you'll see. You'll see acute angles, right angles, obtuse angles, straight, reflex, and full rotation angles. So when you're studying angles, these are the six that you need to know if you want to pass your tests and get good grades. So let's start with acute. I guess maybe I should start with explaining what an angle is. An angle is a measurement between two lines. Now you might think of measurements as in like length, or practically like weight, height, these ways we describe things. An angle is a way that we describe the closeness of two lines, basically. The best way I could explain it. So let's get into some examples, and I think it'll be a little more clear if you haven't learned about it yet. So let's say we have these two lines here, and normally they'll be expressed with some arrows at the end like this. And now, when you have an angle, you're going to see a line in between these two lines. Your two lines. It's a little bit of an arc, and you might have a symbol, probably something like that. If they do put a symbol, they might not. And then we'll label the endpoints of this line, although it does go infinity in these directions. We'll still give them some endpoints so we can talk about it. An acute angle, it'll always be described to me as acuity, so you know it's like tiny. I don't know. It's the best way it was explained to me. So we can talk about this being angle A, B, C. A, B, C, you go in a direction. You could also call it CBA. That is totally up to you, but I normally just go from the top here. And now, an acute angle has this value right here. We'll just talk about the value of the angle. This is a theta sign between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. So that one's a little smaller. That's why it's called that. And we'll go over these at the end. But let's just get some general ideas going on here. Now, a right angle you might have already been introduced to. You're going to have two lines that form a 90-degree angle. Often represented with a box because squares make up 90-degree angles. So let's call this CEF. So then we could either call this angle CEF or FEC. Whatever one you want to do. Doesn't really matter necessarily. And then the identity of a right angle is that it is exactly 90 degrees. Not 91, not 90.5, not 90.0001. It's 90 degrees exactly. So it's a very important detail. As you learn more math in the future, 90-degree angles are actually very important to know, especially if you're working with triangles. Now when it comes to obtuse, if you know the word obtuse, then it might be a little easier, but it's just, you can imagine a little bit larger of an angle. So I'm going in order from smallest to largest, just so you guys can get a good visualization here. And let's call this, I don't know, DTC. We'll call it something like that. So then you could call this angle DTC or call it CTD. The only important thing is that you go from one end to the other. So when you want to start from C and go all the way to D, or D and go all the way to C, doesn't really matter. But an obtuse angle falls between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. So anywhere between there in that range counts as an obtuse angle, and you don't have to worry about it as long as it falls in there. So now let's talk about a straight angle, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Now, although I cannot draw a straight line, imagine this is a perfectly straight line, nothing much to it. And now you might see a reflex point here, and that just kind of, it symbolizes where the bend shows in some of these other lines. But I just didn't draw it. But you might see that reflex point, and they might put that just to explain a little easier to you. And now let's call this one P, B, J. Because PBJs are great. So you can either call this one PBJ, which I think I'll call it that because that works well, or you can call it JBP. Again, working from one side to the other. Doesn't matter necessarily which side you want to work from. However, an important detail about a straight angle is that you can look at it and it makes 180 degrees, which is a straight line. So that's where it gets the name straight angle from, just because it's a straight line. So just like the right angle has to be exactly 90 degrees, this has to be exactly 180. Not 181, not 179, not 176, 180 degrees exactly. Now a reflex angle, we can definitely look at these ones. We'll draw our little reflex point here. And then have it come this way. A reflex angle is slightly larger than a 180 degrees. And let's call this one DMV. So we can call this angle DMV or VMD. Again, work from one side to the other. That's all that matters in these cases. And as far as the measurements go, this angle is going to fall in between 180 degrees, well, greater than 180 degrees, or less than 360 degrees. So that's a lot of space to work with, especially compared to other ones where you're normally kind of strict by 90 degrees. But yeah, this one goes from 180 to 360. And now, similar to kind of how the straight angle is pretty intuitive, I think a full rotation angle probably makes easy sense too. And the way we've been working, you're going to be going all the way around. So you'll be starting from one side and going all the way around. So yeah, you might have some ways of labeling it. I would refer to what your teacher is going to teach in that manner. It's kind of up to preference. Sometimes it's not even necessarily labeled. It might have one letter. Definitely up to them. So I'm not going to necessarily teach you one way or the other. But going over this one, full rotation is all the way around, which is 360 degrees exactly. So just like the right angle and straight angle, you need to be exactly on the money with this. Can't really play around with it. No wiggle room at all. If it's not 360 degrees, it is not a straight, it is not a full rotation angle, and then you would have to identify it otherwise. So yeah, I mean, that was definitely a lot of information. I recommend going through the video again, but we're going to talk a little bit about angles in general, especially if you're not familiar with how angles work. This might help you a little bit. So let's draw out a coordinate plane. And now I'm going to describe how these angles are kind of working over time. So let's say this was that bending point in the angle. We call it the reflex point. There. Basically, if you can imagine, this is kind of the starting line. We're basically working our way around. So we're going to go all the way around this thing. And as we go around the coordinate plane, the angle gets increasingly bigger. So first we started with acute angles, which were less than 90 degrees, which as long as it's between 0 degrees and 90 degrees, worked out quite well. Then as soon as we hit a 90, that was a right angle. And then as soon as we were between 90 degrees and 180 degrees, that is where we fall in obtuse range. And then 180 exactly is a straight angle. And between 180 and 360, which you can also basically call 0 degrees, is the reflex angle. And then as soon as we have 360 degrees all the way around, we have a full rotation angle. So acute, right, obtuse, straight, reflex, full rotation. Now, an important detail I wanted to point out, you might see this also, and your teachers might do this to actually help you, because your teachers do care deeply. They will give you an arrow showing which way it goes, because you can imagine this is not the same as going around that way. If you go around this way, you're going to be getting a really big angle. Go right here, it's going to be a really small angle, an acute angle. So just like this, in right angle you probably won't see it, but they might still put a line just to signify where it goes. Direction that's just going over time. So you'll either see something like this with an arrow, or you'll merely just see a little circle that goes as you rotate around. But regardless, that is all I need to know about angles. So I'll give you guys a nice little view here. We got acute, right, obtuse, straight, reflex, and full rotation. Feel free to watch the video back as many times as you want. At first, it takes a little bit of time to understand, but as soon as you do know it, you probably won't forget it because it all just kind of gets ingrained in your head. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment it on the video. Like, share with your friends, share with your teachers. Would love if you did that. That'd be cool. Be glad to make a video for your class if you want to do that too. But I hope this video was helpful, and I hope geometry is going well for you guys. So take care and have a good day.